Hey everybody, today we're going to be taking a look at a deck from the RS to PK format, which is going to be Exploud EX. And I think one of the things that people really like about the RS to PK format is just how wide the card pool is and how many different decks are viable. And we've seen over the course of the last, I think, 6 months that Jason's been doing these tournaments, these Sunday tournaments, that multiple different decks have done well at these events. Multiple decks have won these events, and you kind of see a shifting meta where certain decks become popular and then kind of fall out of favor, and new decks are discovered. I would say all the time new decks are coming in and out of the format as well. People try to experiment with a lot of different things, and one of the things is I'm a deck builder. I love trying new strategies, building new decks, finding the next big thing. And one of the cards that has really stuck out to me as being good and just waiting to kind of be taken to that next level is going to be Exploud EX. And it's there's a couple different reasons for that. One, it's got 150 hit points. It's a very healthy stage 2 EX. But the main selling point is going to be the Pokebody Extra Noise, which says at any time between turns, put 10 damage on each of your opponent's Pokemon EX. Not your own, just your opponent's. So it's a one-sided Desert Ruins. And on top of that, EXs are incredibly powerful in the RS to PK format, and they are basically in a majority of the decks. So you're always going to get a lot of playability out of that Extra Noise. But going along with that, it also has really good attacks. Derail does 40 damage for 2 energy, and then you discard a special energy attached to the defending Pokemon. And in this format in particular, there are a ton of special energies being played. Free energy removal, hitting for 40 damage, and also building up damage on your opponent's Pokemon EX is really strong. And then the second attack, Hyper Tail, does 60 damage. If they have a power body, it hits for 80 damage instead. This is easily fulfilled with a boost energy, and it goes really well against some of the turn 2 decks in the format, like Banette EX, for example. This deck does fantastic against. So when I was designing the deck, I knew Exploud was going to be the center, but how did I want to build it? What did I want to put around it? And I did go with consistency engine of Pidgeot and Porygon 2. And I'll talk about that a little bit when we get into the deck. I do think there's some different ways you could do this. I do think there's an argument to be made for like a plus or minimum strategy along with a very heavy Cursed Stone count like I did with Dustox EX for 2006 that we covered. I think that would be another way to do the deck. The advantage of having Pidgeot and Porygon 2 is it's just a lot more consistent, especially in a format where everybody's playing 4 Rockets admins. It just helps you find that Exploud EX very quickly. It helps you find that boost energy. There's just a lot of advantages to it. But I did want to say that I think there is a couple of different ways to play the deck, and I think there's a lot to still explore with the deck. But this is my list right now, and this is the list that I've been working on. So starting off here, we play 2 copies of Jirachi from Deoxys. The 2 count we play for a couple of different reasons. One, it does give us a little bit of a chance to open with it, but mainly playing 2 makes sure that we don't prize a lone copy, but we don't devote 3 or 4 spots to it because it's very easily searchable off Hole and Mentor. So between the Jirachi, the Transceiver, and then the Mentor, we have a total of 8 outs to getting Jirachi in that active spot at the first turn of the game. Next up, we play a 3-2-3 Exploud line. This seems a little, this may seem a little thin, but something I've been experimenting with a lot lately is playing a thinner midline and then just playing 2 Pokemon Retriever for a little bit extra versatility. There is a small downside in consistency, like you have a little bit less chance of, say, seeing an Exploud early on. You have a little bit less chance of drawing into an Exploud EX. But the offside of that is that you have a lot more utility with a Pokemon Retriever. You can easily burn one to get a Jirachi back, get a Holen's Magnemite back. So there's pros and cons to playing the deck this way. I went ahead and played 3 Wishmer. That Wail for 10 damage and forcing your opponent to switch is really strong. I've talked about this in a few different videos, but a bunch of people double set. It's just very, very common if you have 2 basics in your hand, you always throw 2 down or 3 down. And it's a really bad habit to get into. The only thing that I found in this format that actually punishes you for starting 2 basics is going to be Umbreon Star, and that is such a niche, rare scenario to come up. It's just not worth double setting at the start of the game. So the whale that does 10 damage switches the defending Pokemon. This can be absolutely, like, this can just completely destroy your opponent's start. They can put them a turn behind. These can all be very big things if you do open with that Wishmer. I did split the Loudred count here 1-1. Body Slam, chance of paralysis is strong in certain situations. The Double Edge for 50 can also be strong in certain situations, especially when you can fulfill it with boost energy. And then Surprise, 20 damage, choose a card out of their hand. This can be strong with a late game admin. And then a 40 Snipe can also be very strong. So they're each situationally good. There really wasn't one that I thought was considerably better than the other, so I just split the count. Next up, we play 3 copies of Exploud EX. Like I said, it just great body, great hit points, very solid attacks. The retreat cost really isn't too much of an issue. The big thing is that weakness to fighting. And fighting decks come in and out of the format, but if you're expecting to see a lot of, we'll say, Ryags or Medicham or Hariyama EX, stuff like that, Meganium, this is probably not a deck you should take to a tournament. This is the sort of deck that you're going to choose to show up with if you're expecting a lot of, like, say, Banette, a lot of Arcanine, decks that rely very heavily on EXs or special energy. Mutrick, for example, it's very strong against. Dragtrode, it can be very strong against too, since that Dragonite is colorless weak, and then you're just building up damage on those Sneasel EXs. So, the other weakness I found for it, and this doesn't come up too often in the EX format, is Battle Frontier does shut off the Exploud EX. It's kind of a unusual, I don't know, it seems a little random, because Battle Frontier is not super common. We do play counter stadiums, but just as a note on that, Battle Frontier isn't out to Exploud EX. I ran into that earlier tonight when I was playing a game against the Mutrick deck, for example. Next up, we play a 101 Pidgeot line and then a 1-1 Porygon 2 line. This looks horrendous on paper. I know how bad this looks. It doesn't look like it makes any sort of sense, but I've tested this extensively, especially in my Gardevoir build, which I covered a couple of months ago on the channel. It plays really, really, really well, and that's mainly because of how much utility that Holo Mentor gives you and how easy it is to search out these lone copies and then use Jirachi to find what you need with Wishing Star. The reason we split it is for a couple of different reasons. One, if you do end up prizing one, like, hey, we prize the Pidgey, we prize the Pidgeot, it's not that big of a deal because you still have the other one to rely on. The Porygon 2 is always going to be easier to set up than the Pidgeot because it's a Stage 1 versus a Stage 2. So, especially in the early game, sometimes I'll just go for that Porygon 2, use that for consistency, and then the Pidgeot will come when it comes. Now, I'm going to say, too, the other reason is Pidgeot's very good at getting you certain cards for certain situations. The weakness of Pidgeot is that it doesn't refill your hand. So when your opponent admins you to 1 or admins you to 2, you have to spend your quick search to search out like a Steven's Advice, best case scenario, and then draw 5 or 6 cards and get what you need from there. The advantage with Porygon 2 is if you can get Porygon 2 and Pidgeot into play, it's just such a great combination where you can back up. Admins never hurt you. You draw back up to 6. You still have your quick search to get what you need. It's just very, very strong to get them both in play, and it's not nearly as hard as it looks on paper. So I tested this a lot. I feel very comfortable with playing these lines. 1 copy of Holon's Magnemite. It can be a little risky with our basic count here because we play 5, 6, only 7 basics, 8 with the Holon Magnemite. But I do think it's worth the risk, especially we do play Warp Point. We are, if we do have to retreat into a Jirachi, something like that, I know it's a risk to play the Magnemite, but being able to search for that energy off Holon Mentor, I just feel is so strong for the deck in general. Next up, we play 4 Transceiver, 2 Mentor, 1 Scientist, 1 Adventurer. This is going to be our Holon engine. I don't play the 3rd Mentor in this. I guess I feel a little bit safer playing that extra copy of Jirachi. I'm not against a 3rd Holon Mentor, I just really don't want to drop anything to find room for it. 4 copies of Rocket's Admin, absolute staple in this format. It's so strong, especially against these Stage 2 decks that we're trying to prey upon. I'm sorry, not Stage 2 decks, Turn 2 decks that we're trying to prey upon, like Banette or our Canine EX. We want to put them at that low hand size, and then just start letting that extra noise build up damage on them, that boost energy, stuff like that. Being able to kind of curb those quick starts they usually get is going to be so important for this deck. 4 rare candy, we need that for our Exploud line and our Pidgeot line here. 3 Elms training method, this is another deck unfortunately I can't play Celo's Network on, and we have to be able to search out that Exploud EX, so we do go with 3 Elms training method here. I think you could make an argument to do like 2 Elms, 1 Celio, but I do just play the 3 Professor Elms training method in here. 3 Steven's Advice. I found lately in particular a lot of decks rely on very large benches. Dragtrode's a deck that relies on a very large bench. Even decks like Rayquaza usually have 3 to 4 Pokemon in play, so worst case scenario, you're still usually netting 3 to 4 cards off of it. It can be very weak if you open with it at your only supporter, but since so much of the format relies on Hold On Mentor to set up, usually you're going to get some pretty decent numbers off that Steven's Advice. Next up, I've debated a few different things with the Stadium line here. I have 4 spots to devote to it, but basically I play 2 Windstorm, 2 Space Center. The idea behind it is the Space Center is because I see Lunatone Solrock making a lot of plays. It's becoming very common in a lot of decks, especially if we're playing a deck that's trying to prey upon those turn 2 decks. We want to be able to have that out to the Lunatone Solrock, so we can use our Pidgeot, we can use our Porygon 2. And then the 2 Windstorm is going to be against decks that play a lot of Cessation Crystals. Rayquaza Stantler, for example, is one that where we're probably going to need that Windstorm. Get that Cessation Crystal out of play, and then let us have our Pidgeot, let us have our Porygon 2. 2 Warp Point, I feel like this is pretty standard in a lot of decks. I think it also gives us a lot of versatility, especially if we, say, want to put an Exploud back to the bench, send up a fresh one, something like that. When we're relying very heavily on boost energy to fulfill attack requirements, we're not always going to have that energy to retreat, especially when Exploud's a 3 energy Pokemon to retreat. And we want to be able to get out of those special conditions that are unfortunately also common in the format. The only downside I found in the deck is our only free retreater is going to be Pidgeot here, but our goal is to set it up anyway, so ideally we're going to have that in play. 2 Pokemon Retriever, I covered that earlier. It just helps with some of these thinner lines a little bit. We are playing a very sparse Pokemon lineup here. I think I've only got 15, so having that second Retriever just to make sure we have what we need is going to be very key. 1 copy of POW. I do like POW in this deck. This deck can do a lot of I've had a lot of games where I can fall behind very early, and then I'm setting it up where, you know, against decks that have to put multiple EXs in play, I'm just setting it all up where I'm going to take 4 to 6 prizes in the span of maybe 2 to 3 turns, and POW just helps that goal. It also helps us to bring up something that maybe our opponent doesn't want in the active spot, stuff like that. So the 1 POW is really good, especially when we're already comboing with the Pidgeot, to be able to search out that 1 POW. Moving on to the energy lineup here, we do play 14 energy, 15 if you want to count the Magnemite. I do go a little heavier in this than I do in other decks because I'm devoting 4 copies to the boost energy, but I've just found boost so good in the deck with Hyper Tail. It's very easy to just boost, get 80 damage out of nowhere, and typically 1 boost energy should equal 1 to 2 prizes, so it's usually a very good return on your trade-off. 4 copies of Warp Point. I like Warp Point in this. It's so easy to throw in there. Once again, it combos with the Pidgeot line. We don't have that like Lunatone Solrock in this one, but we do play the Pidgeot with a free retreat, so it is easy to warp back to a Pidgeot, or if our opponent is trying to strand something in the active spot, like let's say a Porygon 2, something like that, we can just warp it out of there. Lastly, we play 3 Heal Energy, 3 Cyclone Energy. The Heal seems a little unusual in this, I know, but I wanted to play, I guess, an energy that I thought comboed well with Jirachi first off. If our opponent does some random sniping on like a Wishmer or a Loudred, something like that, we can use that Heal Energy on. It's very good with Pidgeot. If we need to attack with Pidgeot in certain situations, or if our opponent has Cursed Stone or something in play too, it can help in those situations. The advantage of Heal Energy is it doesn't... I had 4 Cyclone and 2 Heal, but there's definitely situations where you don't want the opponent to actually switch, so splitting the line there worked a little bit better for me in testing. Just as a reminder, though, Heal Energy does not work with Pokemon EX. You can attach it to Exploud EX, but it's not going to count as anything more than just a colorless energy. Then lastly, we play 3 Cyclone Energy. This combos very well in a format where your opponent is playing a ton of, I won't say your opponent, but cards like Cessation Crystal are very common. It's great to be able to switch that out of the active spot and then get a free turn with powers to ideally find an answer. Maybe that's a quick search for a Windstorm, or maybe you just need to back up to a larger hand size and then have more options to deal with whatever the Cessation Crystal is under. I have also found situations where my opponent is kind of predicting certain knockouts, like they're sending up an EX and they know that EX is going to get knocked out by Exploud, but I can make a Cyclone Energy play and then send it back to the bench and then have it get knocked out by Extra Noise in the next couple of turns. And I can change how the prizes fall in certain situations with Cyclone Energy. So I have found that really nice. I think playing the Warp Heal Cyclone Energy is going to be better and more efficient than just, say, playing random Fire Energy or random Lightning Energy. I think there is a certain level of... I think you could fake certain things if you really needed to. Like, I think you could play 1 Lightning Energy in the deck and fake X card, or play 1 Fire Energy in the deck and fake something else. But I feel like you are playing a subpar energy compared to, let's say, a Warp or a Cyclone or a Heal to play that Fire Energy, and then you're relying on your opponent to be smart enough to make the read of what you're trying to fake. And then, on top of that, have that be something they actually care about enough to have to play around. And I think at that point, we're getting into like the Princess Bride situation where it's like, well, you know that I know if you know that I know, with the drinks. But at that point, I think your mind games are much farther along than they need to be, and it's just better to play the superior energy in my opinion. So that, guys, is that is going to wrap up our deck profile on Exploud EX. I think it's a very fun deck to play. I think the deck has a ton of potential, but it is very, very meta dependent. This is the type of deck that you take into a tournament when you're expecting a ton of very EX heavy and focused decks. This is not going to be a deck that's going to be successful in a field of Ryegs or Dark Steelix or stuff like that. You want to play this in a format where you know you're going to hit very heavy EX decks every single round of the tournament. But I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have not already, please like and subscribe. And of course, I hope to see you in the next video.